Good afternoon, everybody. Labdien, Tere. My name is Gunta Sloga, and I'm Director for Baltic Center for Media Excellence, and I'm glad to see all of you today online in the presentation Changes in Media Consumption, Russian-speaking audiences in Estonia and Latvia. And I have to say that this is a continuation of the research our researchers have been doing for some time. Also, last year, some of you maybe will remember, we had a bigger research on trust in media in Baltics as a whole. And of course, what is relevant and important, I think, in everyday life, especially for media in Baltics, in Estonia and in Latvia specifically, of course, it is what is the attitude of minorities, what is the role of media for them, what is the perception of the media, and what sources are thought to be credible or trusted by them. And do they have news fatigue, and do they follow what is happening in Ukraine now, and many, many other issues. And before we move to presentations, we have two presentations. The first one will be from Rožukalne, professor of the Faculty of Communication at Riga Stradins University and also Public Electronic Media Ombudswoman. And another speaker will be Joesaar, advisor at Ministry of Culture and also associate professor of media policies at Tallinn University, Baltic Film, Media and Art School. Before we go for presentations, I just have to warn you that this presentation will be recorded. And also, if you have any questions or comments during the presentations, either write them on comments or keep them to yourself. And after presentations, we will have a Q&A session where I hope everybody will be able to question or comment our experts. And now I would like to ask Anda, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, I hope everybody also hears us, and the floor is yours.
Okay, good afternoon, dear colleagues. It's my pleasure to see among you very many friendly faces and known names. Actually, this research, given that there is always lack of opportunities to create studies in media and communication, this is the combination of various options, and basically data which I'm going to present is a part of Ombudsperson research. Happily, my colleague Joesaar joined the idea because the basic idea was better understand quantitative data. This will be qualitative data on how media users perceive journalism, quality of media, and other aspects of media performance nowadays. Well, and yes, and later after this focus group survey, I share the methodology, and later you will see the Estonian data on more or less the same questions discussed in focus groups in Latvia. My plan for today's presentation is as follows: the short intro, then main results, some examples illustrating audience reactions, and a couple of slides devoted to discussion and conclusions. Well, those data were collected last year at the beginning of fall. There were 7 focus groups discussions held in various various regions. Field work was conducted by professional research company Latvian Facts. And today, following requests by Baltic Media Excellence Center, I will concentrate on Russian-speaking respondents groups results. You will see discussions in Riga, in eastern part of Latvia. Participants came from Daugavpils and Rezekne, and the third group consists of western part inhabitants from Liepāja and Ventspils. A few words about the theoretical approach. This actually basic idea of this research combines two approaches. It discusses criteria and categories which are included in a theory which covers journalism as discursive institution, which describes journalism as a phenomena which are defined and perceived in an actual context of social, political events and other situations, which is changing. Journalist perception of journalism is not stable according this approach. And the second approach, which calls to include more audience perception, audience role, audience presence in a research of media environment. And below this short explanation, you can see the group of most discussed questions, like information environment, functions and roles of journalists, media role, media perception, interpretation of quality and of journalism, and as well media related activities and elections. Well, the main results. Actually, we can see the big mixture of information sources, and according to audience responses, we can conclude that audience are focused more on interesting information, news, and less pay attention to the source of news. And there were even examples when respondents or participants insist that they are not using particular media content, but in fact he or she is reflecting on either its public media content or concrete outlet or platform of commercial media. This comes from the growing pattern to use media content via social networking sites. Research participants, they actually feel that there are a lot of information available for them, and they don't feel a lack of news or other kind of information, and they are quite self-critical. They admit that their understanding of actual processes are based on superficial use of actual news. They admit that they mostly are informed according to the headline level. Well, some of there are, and you will see later more in Andres Joesaar's presentation. Of course, there are always several groups of media users. Small part of them are more active, but the interesting conclusion is that if there is a very important news piece or topic, then audience members try to find more information. For Russian-speaking audience members, it's interesting that their use of international information differs from Latvian-speaking respondents. Russian-speaking people, they use more various sources. They try to compare and then later decide to trust or not to trust to particular piece of news. Well, commenting the structural changes in media environment in Latvia, as you may know, that almost all of Russian TV channels has been closed last year in Latvia due security reasons. I mean, mostly Russian government-controlled Russian-speaking media. And it's interesting that Russian-speaking audience usually has been defined in very close connections with those sources of information, with Russian-speaking media, Russia's media channels. But according to those data, they don't feel actually the lack of those information sources, but they still are very interested in local, national level, international level information in Russian, because it's more comfortable for them to use. Well, yeah, as I mentioned already, many of informants, they don't recognize distinctions between various media platforms, professional ones and unprofessional or alternative, and those information flows that comes from via social networks. What is interesting when we are speaking on journalism quality, of important criteria how to evaluate media content and journalistic quality, then the almost only and mostly mentioned criteria is the diversity of opinions. This is what audience members expect from professional media, and when you analyze their quotes and what they discussed during focus groups discussions, that they somehow identify that there is a lack of various views. They somehow feel that there is a lack of views which represent groups they representing. And yes, this is one of interesting conclusions, which partly actually comes out from quantitative data as well. And focus groups discussants, they actually evaluate media by using the same professional standards which are used by media professionals. Those are normative principles and standards. The participants perceive those principles as very important, but still they are demanding towards professional media and public service media in particular, but this doesn't mean that they are very interested in professionally prepared content. This is paradoxical, somehow paradoxical conclusion. Yes, and this is why I wrote there that this understanding of role of media combine normative ideas and ideals with distrust to the media. Actually, that's quite a big surprise, because discussions were held before elections, and the largest part of Russian-speaking participants, they firstly felt like lack of information, but they were not enough informed about elections and those candidates and parties, but part of them were disinterested in this information, because not all, but a few were not citizens of Latvia. This is the reason why they were not interested in this information. And yes, commenting the news fatigue, many of not only Russian-speaking but Latvian-speaking respondents as well feel very tired in connection with the flow of news on Ukraine, because they feel helpless. They don't know how to improve the situation. This is one of the reasons why they don't want to consume Ukraine news. Okay, and there are slides with the codes where you can see probably and hopefully you can see the answer. What does this mean if people are combining social network usage with the professional media usage? Then you can see, what does this mean? This means that part of them are subscribed particular channels you can find in social media platforms. Facebook is more popular than others among this group of respondents. And yes, they explicitly are saying that there are some parts of content they are missing, but still they don't feel that they miss like generally Russian channels and other. The second quote shows the attitude expressed towards various information pieces, and there is this constant attempts to select news according the positive or negative feelings created by news content. And there is a group of respondents who try to avoid negative or disturbing news, and they even insisted that there should be media responsibility to balance. Real events are not so important as this need to balance negative and positive news, not to increase the stress that comes out of negatively evaluate news. More examples of media use and diversity of information sources. And this is very interesting how respondents combine public service media, other commercial media, social networks. And it's interesting that the largest part of them freely are changing between Latvian language, Russian language media or sources, that they are not stick on Russian language media. This is like natural environment where they use to look for information, but the language is not the main criteria to use or not to use particular media source. Yes, and there are other quotes you can read by yourselves, not to make my presentation even longer, to see how participants interpret their attitude towards media, towards difference in Latvian media environment between Latvian and Russian media content. Actually, they generally don't feel that there is a big difference. Even some of them mentioned that there is a lack of opinion diversity among Russian-speaking media, but they admitted, as there is the situation that Latvian media produce more content than Russian, than that content which is available in Russian, that sometimes the news comes or information comes with delay. And this is interesting, a bit the difference between various generations. If adults mostly use Facebook or YouTube, then younger respondent says that she combines it with Instagram, and as well recently established independent media Chaika in Daugavpils, where she noticed that there is a truthful, verified information. Okay, let's go for a next examples again, but you can see in those quotes what actually is meant by saying that respondents are looking for more positive information and use to avoid information which makes them the more stressful. And yes, there is, I think, an interesting quote which try to compare media usage and attitude towards media in one family regarding gender, perception of gender roles and other. Yes, and then we can see actually this call for information and opinion diversity is combined with the selection of information sources which provides more positive or probably less negative information. And this respondent actually mentioned that if there is too many negative information, that she used to reject, she used to just leave a particular information source. Well, and now just a brief explanation of what actually means this institutional approach towards journalism. This is the structure how journalistic rules are perceived in global research project Words of Journalism study. And then you can see the two big domains: journalistic roles in a domain of political life, where you can see this information instructive role, analytical deliberative, critical monitorial, advocative radical, development educative, and collaborative facilitative role, and the other domain which is related with the everyday life, where journalists could be not only the person who provides information, analysis, some investigative or advocacy to perform those with social political events related roles, but other roles like mood manager, inspirator, guide, friend, and others. And those are criteria taken for research, because usually journalistic roles are studied according how journalists perceive their professional roles. In this case, we tried to go innovative direction and ask audience member how they perceive journalistic roles. And there is a combination because during those focus groups discussions, quantitative data were collected as well with the help of small survey, and there are some results which roles are important for audience members. Okay, yeah, this is what I already said. Well, from the domain of political life, you can see that the roles related with education to get the new knowledge and provide solutions on how to deal with society's problems, and speaking on behalf of marginalized groups are important for respondents. Those are data representing all focus group participants, not only Russian-speaking people. And very important are, which already came out from other data, ability to express various opinions, and an analytical role on interpretation on current affairs. Of course, other roles are very important. And now in this slide, you can see the brief comparison, which particular roles were more important for Russian-speaking and Latvian-speaking respondents. The first tell stories that emotionally move the audience actually comes from the everyday daily life domain. It is more important for Russian-speaking respondents, and this duty to influence public opinion as well is very important for Russian-speaking respondents. And to compare with Latvian-speaking participants, they more admitted journalists' duty and journalism should support national development, advocate for social change, and speak on behalf of marginalized groups and promote peace and tolerance. And there you can see this next domain of everyday life. And again, as I already mentioned, respondents really highly evaluate this emotional part of journalism, but the more results are related with need to receive entertainment and relaxation from journalists, but as well ability to attract largest audience and to provide practical information orientation for daily life. And then in the next slide, you can see how differ audience perception of journalists' roles and journalists' opinions. And before all those roles description, you should put that audience wants more than journalists actually perceive their role in support of government's policy. Audience accept that journalists should do that, set political agenda, communicate a positive image of political leaders, influence public opinion, which journalists were not very interested to achieve. Journalists in less proportion admit their duty to speak on behalf of marginalized group, and even it is growing this role to provide practical information. Journalists still are less interested in this kind of performance than audience members. Okay, and there is a slide which try to explain how audience members discussed on journalistic roles. And yes, there are various perceptions. There are, like, when journalists are brave, expose what's actually is going on behind many processes, which is of course normative perception, but still expected from professionals. Some and there are only like selected quotes, but many of this of participants says that sometimes there is a lack of deep analysis or deep knowledge-based content which they can find in other non-professional sources, which means that the audience feel this competition in a public communication environment between various information sources, and they actually adequately evaluate the competence and other characteristics to compare professional media and other performance and other sources. From all journalistic roles, they really admitted this educational role to get news, to understand what's going on. And regarding professional principles, many actually, besides this diversity of opinion principle or objectivity principle, they express their view that journalists should provide information neutrally, by not taking sides or not giving more voice to one only for one side opinion representatives, or for which are participating in public discussion. Yes, and there is a few more examples that objectivity is very important. Avoiding expressing personal opinion is explicitly communicate during this discussion. And discursively, you can observe that by saying that there is a probably lack of objectivity, those thoughts are related with how Russia's invasion in Ukraine is represented in Latvian media, and yes, this was discussed during those during focus groups discussions. Yes, and this is how participants perceive actually proportions of information. They think that there should be other topics, not only those priorities, actual priorities related with war, some political events or pandemic. They actually refer to pandemic news, that those are the same disturbing or boring, or making them tired from news as Ukraine war news. And then, of course, you can see as well opinions about public service media, which are perceived are very professional. Actually, there is no critiques about professional level, but still not as interesting as other information sources, and not interesting for younger audience. That kind of perception, which actually representing stereotypes about public service media, were seen in a focus group discussions. And there I tried to put together various opinions about public service media and commercial media. Then public service media are perceived as more reliable, but still there is a lack of diversity of opinions according to the form and the content. Public service media are seen as more boring and serious, and representing more state or government interest related content, which could attract, as audience members think, more older or mature audience representatives, and vice versa. Commercial media who as well provide interesting and reliable content. Audience members are aware that this content is influenced by the aim to focus on profit and entertainment, but they perceive that there is a more diverse content and opinions provided by commercial media, and commercial media are addressed for all audience groups, including young people and those who are not interested in public service media content. Yes, and there's explanation, some basis on what I said before regarding representation of Russia's invasion in Ukraine. Yes, and they Russian-speaking discussion participants, they really feel that their position is not enough reflected firstly in public service media content, but in Latvian media content as well, in other media in Latvian as well. And they think that there is other opinion, as they usually said, is lacking. They cannot, and this is why they are looking for other perspectives. Of course, I can admit, this is not seen on a slide or other slides, that there were expressed opinion about war in Ukraine and Russia's role in this terrible conflict, which actually mirrored quite directly Russia's propaganda narratives, and this actually was a basis why some of discussion group participants insisted that there is a lack of other side position and the lack of opinion diversity. Yeah, and then you can see how they see that conflict. I will not read because the time is flying. But yes, still, if even they are interested in a conflict, they really are tired about those news, which actually this explanation, it's very in line with the other research on news fatigue and news avoidance. Okay, finally, conclusions. What I observed, and especially in Russian-speaking audience focus groups, part of participants, they actually don't trust the media has a right to and opportunity actually to provide information independently and freely. But this was not a conclusion which is filled with critique. It somehow represents this status like natural situation of media environment, and this is why using this pattern, this new theoretical approach of people's theory about the media, I would say that yeah, I can identify somehow a new people's theory which says that the media cannot operate independently. And this actually shows that in political communication and in society, you can observe this notion of instrumental media, when media are used to promote particular ideological beliefs or one-sided opinions, which actually is very interesting in combination with this normative understanding, which is very clear for focus group participants. And the second theory is related with diversity of opinions, which I touched already many times. And Russian-speaking audience members, they really believe that there is a lack of various opinions, various perspectives, lack of diversity not only of opinions, but as well of diverse sources of information in content of Latvian media and local information available in Russian. This is, I think, very important to hear. What does this mean? How they perceive this information? Yes, and this contradictory attitude about PSM's performance, where there is this very positive attitude regarding professional performance, but still suspicious that public service media are not representing public's interests, that they are more biased and related with the interests of state and government official position. And last conclusion slide on contradictory attitude about role of journalists. As you already said, seen by quotes and other data, there is no conflict how professional journalists perceive their performance and how what audience actually, what kind of criteria audience use to evaluate journalists. They really expect that journalists should be neutral, professional, responsible, represent all groups of society, provide analysis, explanations, verify facts, fight against misinformation, disinformation, to tell the truth and expose those in power. And still, if you ask them if it's important to you, where you are using this kind of high quality journalistic content, that they said that they are not actually interested. They expect that there is this content somewhere, but this is not a part of their daily news repertoire, their daily information diet. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks a lot, Anda. many questions are raising during your presentation, really, on how do media can actually convince the audience that they have to be trusted and that they provide diverse information. But now I would like to go to Andres. What is the view on Estonian audiences? Is it similar? Are there differences?
Hello, everyone. Yes, there are similarities and there are some differences. I hope you see my screen now.
Yes, we can see.
So, and I will introduce this qualitative study. There are So the study was commissioned by Baltic Center for Media Excellence, and it was supported by Tallinn University. And design of research questions, it started from Latvia, and we made some additions from Estonian side, and this implementation and report was provided by Norstat, who had this. The topic of the research is the role and importance of professional media. It's the same, and in particular public service media in the life of Russian-speaking populations of Estonia. Our interest was at how only audience shapes the meaning and quality of media, the role of media and journalism in a society, as well as how media influences choices during the elections. The methodology was focus group discussions, which were held in November, December last year. And we had 2 hours roughly per session. Some were even slightly longer. We we focused only on Russian speakers. So there was some budget limitations, and we don't have comparative focus groups in Estonian language. So we focused in Russian speakers living in Harju and Ida-Virumaa counties, and filter for being on board was that they will be primarily Russian media consumers, and we have 5 focus groups, and number of participants in each one was around 7. And so we had quite a good overview of Russian-speaking audience. This is a little bit more detailed, the profiles of focus groups. We had representatives of very different life areas from every field, and it's really interesting to look into these. If we look in information and media content in general, then the interest from the audience was that they would like to be informed. And being informed means keeping up with the times, being aware of the latest news, feeling alive, experiencing the fullness of life. Two of these last ones are more connected to entertainment side of media. And the first 2 are this information and educational side. The purpose of media content consumption is connected to this. It's stay up to date, to be on board, so to say, to self-educate, and also entertainment parts of the life. The importance of media content consumption lies in being able to predict the changes. So media is some kind of crystal ball which helps to predict the future and enables to plan the life, the future, and to make informed choices and opinions. And also, it's important for analysis to make informed conclusions and decisions, and again, the joy, pleasure, and satisfaction it gives. And hot topics in the media, I must say that most likely these are pretty much the same right now, even it's half year has passed. It's still Ukraine-Russian conflict, sanctions against Russia, and it's also energy crisis. Maybe the energy crisis is not so relevant, but it's still in the media. So just to sum up the previous slide, this for many being informed means keeping up with their times, being aware of the latest news, as well as feeling alive and experiencing the fullness of life. This is a positive role of the media. In addition to being updated, media content consumption allows people to self-educate, enjoy, relax, and get entertained. Again, this kind of supportive function. Study results show that for the participants, it is important to consume media content to be able to predict changes, plan life, make informed choices, decision, and conclusion. It's kind of helping tool to stay alive in our world. So it's one quotation, and I don't have too many of them, but one of these, which is quite impressive. As you can see, one male participant, young one, wrote or told, my wife had savings in a Russian bank, and I actively followed information in the media in order to understand what was going on. The probability of war was actively discussed there, and on February 22nd, when we realized that something was definitely about to happen, we withdraw all the money. The news saved our money. I don't know what would have happened to it if I hadn't watched the news. So at least one day before, or 2 days before the war started, something positive from the news was learned. Main sources of information. And this is pretty much in line with other surveys we have conducted, and especially during the recent years. The internet is key source for information in all age groups. Despite the age, the gender, region, it's not relevant. The first platform people are seeking for information is online platform. Like young groups, some middle-aged and older groups participants still use television, including one-line TV, where they can watch Russian TV channels banned from Estonian airwaves. Social media, friends, relatives, colleagues are other popular sources of information. And this is really the same conclusion we can draw from this survey comparing to the other surveys we have conducted earlier. Slightly, if we would like to imagine this audience in from the point of view how they assess awareness, and then we can spread this into 4 groups: people who are well informed, people who believe that they are enough informed and they don't want to know more. There are people which are partially informed and they are only aware of what's on the agenda in the media. And then we have groups, the 4th group, which feels that they are quite confused because they don't know what is fake and what is true, and there is plenty of information and I don't know what to believe in. And this is a challenge for the media. So, information seeking. Firstly, it was this kind of reflections that first phase, if to put it into two points in the timeline, was increased activity and consumption of information. When COVID arrived, there were a lot of people looking for information about this disease, and then war in Ukraine and parliamentary elections, which were coming. People were actively looking for information in this field. And then the news fatigue arrived. As a result, partially or complete refusal of media consumption. Some young people said they have not yet recovered from the coronavirus crisis when the events in Ukraine have started, and their psyche simply doesn't allow them to be as involved in these events. And again, it's pretty much in line with other surveys, and we have felt, especially with the younger people, that there are difficulties or the mental health problems are something which are more uprising or coming into agenda with the young people. I don't know, maybe elderly people have already seen and they are strong. They have seen a lot during their lives and they are a little bit stronger, but for the young people it might be difficult. Key factors driving news fatigue are media saturated environment, causing inability to follow and adjust to continuous big changes and leading to the mood disorders, depression, despair, apathy, annoyance, and rejection. Those who wholly consume content they find interesting, comprehensive, and useful, as well as the ones who have clear intention to avoid content they find uninteresting. Said this decision is the only way to save nerves and maintain better mental health. So not to consume, not to follow, this saves your life. It being isolated on information field. It's one slide from another survey, but it describes the situation from another angle. We ask, and this is a quantitative study with 1,000 respondents all over Estonia. And the question was, please assess how reliable you consider the following media to be providing information about the war in Ukraine. And this is a response from Russian speakers. And as you can see, this red representing response not reliable, totally not reliable and mostly not reliable, it's dominating. And there are also quite a lot of people saying that they don't know, they didn't express their opinion. And as a part of people who believe that these channels are reliable, it's quite a small one. And if you look into this, it says this is quite equal for all media channels. As you can see in the middle, there are Russian media channels. Russian speakers in Estonia don't trust Russian media channels. They don't trust alternative news portals. They don't trust private media news portals. There is a really lack of trust. And it's terrifying, actually, if you can't trust in anything. They don't trust in East, they don't trust in the locals, they don't trust in the Western media channels. And if you compare this picture with Estonian ones, so you can see that Estonians respondents totally mistrust Russian media channels, alternative news portals, and also blogs and social networks are less trusted. But there is a strong trust in channels of Estonian national broadcasting, and also national private TV channels are trusted, national daily newspapers, private media portals, regional media, local private radio channels, and also Western media, which is trusted. So that's based on this one, we can see quite a remarkable differentiation of communities based on a language and trust in media. To continue with news fatigue, in the huge flows of information, often contradictory, some get confused, while their inability to find out the truth leads to the feeling of powerlessness and helplessness. As a result, people stop believing the news at all and try to avoid it. They become suspicious and start questioning all the information they receive. Lack of trust. Russian-speaking audiences is somewhat suspicious, and the root of it lies in the fact that the Russian audience and the Estonian audience sometimes receive different information. Another important factor driving news fatigue and avoidance among Russian-speaking population of Estonia is anti-Russian sentiment. In addition to being oppressed through persecution of their native language, closure of Russian schools, deprivation of civil rights, they are offended with the fact that Russia as a neighboring country is always treated as an enemy in the media. And this is taken as citations, not opinion. These are these points taken out for responses from participants. This is what some of the people believe. Here it's a more academic slide about news fatigue drivers. I will not touch it everything, but what is important to understand, it's not one formula we can fix. Based on the responses from this focus group survey, we can see that there is a media saturation, which is one of these. Repetition, there is too much same kind of information coming from all the channels, repeating the same and the same story. There is one reason is contradictions. There are different news sources delivering different opinions on the same events or same facts, interpretation of these facts. And also, which came out, it's the last sentence from the previous slide, it's anti-Russian sentiment. They believe that there is this kind of infringement of the Russian-speaking population in media. This is not actually supported by content analysis of the media, but we cannot change the opinion what people have said. Now, moving further to the functions and roles of journalism in media. The attributes of professional media is it being neutral, dispassionate, fact-based narration, lack of spite. Media pluralism should be there. It should have big resources, experienced team, and ability to admit mistakes. In the middle age and older groups, popular opinion was that there is no professional media in Estonia at all. Some stated it is important for the media outlet to be professional, as only professional media have resources, connections, and sources needed to produce high quality content. Others, on the opposite, admitted professional media are usually dependent on the government, political party, or sponsors, while unprofessional media are more independent and are more eager to tell the truth. They are deeply convinced good quality media can be unprofessional. The question, is public service media professional? Though we have three major opinions. Rather, yes. So younger people, their opinion was that considering the volume of financing, public service media is professional enough. And even some participants think that public service media are underfunded. And they believe that public service media do their best, their maximum with the resources they have. And rather no, they are saying that public service media is amateur, too many failures to be called professional. And maybe, and somewhere in the middle, maybe not, professional media are not necessarily public media, as well as public media are not necessarily professional. So to move there, it's these critics over public service media, they're saying that even there are financing and financed by the state, they don't care about the quality of the content. Public service, it's also opinions that public service media are of a lower quality, too slow when it comes to urgent matters, work not hard enough for the good of society, and are one-sided. Talk about the government only in positive way, talk only about the advantages of decisions made. There is no constructive criticism or another point of view displayed, no negative aspects of decisions made. The interest of the Russian-speaking part of population of Estonia are underrepresented or represented superficially. And this is opinion mainly from the participants from the middle age and older groups. To continue with critics we received, foreign policy dominates the media content, while some social issues are covered only for show, so to say, to distract from more important problems. And now comes a very interesting point, and it's not just a one opinion, but quite some told the same opinion. That the middle-aged group from Tallinn expressed opinions that touching the high-profile topics, such as transition of education system to Estonia or the war in Ukraine, is just a way to distract people from more important problems, such as the energy crisis and highest ever inflation. And for me, it's quite surprising to see that these energy crisis and inflation are more important topics than changes in educational system or the war in Ukraine. But this is something which we should take into account. So, to take top 5 where public service media in Estonia is good at. Supporting cultural life, covering local events, opportunities for leisure and activities. It's also good in covering everyday questions, how to get allowances, benefits, subsidies for electricity, and so on, this kind of daily supporting role. Representing different points of view in some questions, but not related to politics. And conducting debates, it's also the first and the most important one. You can see that they are good at conducting debates. The culture of debating in Estonia is very good, but ask ERR why political debates that take place in Estonia are not translated into Russian. Actually, just to comment on this one, there were also political debates in ETV Plus in Russian languages. And it means that some people just haven't followed ETV Plus or haven't found these talk shows or discussion debates. And also it's important role for a public service media to inform people on urgent critical topics. And you can see there is a contradiction in these responses. Some people criticize, saying that public service broadcasting is too slow and it doesn't report on urgent matters. But in the other hand, there are a lot of people saying that this is a strength of public service broadcasting in Estonia. So about how they described the role of public service media, and this is something which is in line with the theory, there's a new media theory what Andrei just introduced at the end of her presentation. So what are these important roles for a public service media? It's to give comprehensive advices, to cover everything meaningfully, what is going on, from science to space, to impact, support, and promote culture, and local news are important, to educate population, to teach media literacy, digital competencies, and others. And most important is work for the good of society, fight for the public interest to make the government move. So, assessment of the freedom of speech in journalism in Estonia. It has different opinions. There is no one which can represent all the focus groups. The most negative one, it says that there is no freedom of press, freedom of speech in Estonia at all. The positive one says that media and people in Estonia are as a free, and in the middle there is opinion that media is free to some extent, and it's relative. But what is common to all of them, it's the criticism towards the ruling party government. Deputies is considered as a fact of freedom of speech, while cases when those who speak positively towards Russia being banned. So people feel that yes, you are allowed to criticize the Estonian government, this freedom exists, but everything which is connected to information about Russian government activities, this is banned and freedom of press is limited. So it's the same slide, a little bit more on this third point I just touched. And they're rather free to express their thoughts. And as it said, that there are cases they bring up in the responses, while those who speak positive towards Russia being banned, deported, not allowed to the government, also criminal cases are being opened against them, like Yana Toom, Yuri Kivi, Mihhail Stalnuhhin. And these are perceived as a breach of rights of freedom of speech. Media and elections, very shortly about this. And there is people who have this active role, with active role in a civil position in a society, and there are people with a very passive role. And these passive ones, they don't follow information about elections, they are not interested. It's everywhere, it's on streets, on Facebook, I don't care, that's too much. People are convinced important information will somehow reach them, meaning that they are pretty passive on this one. And they get the information from outdoor posters, billboards, and there is plenty of billboards on the street. And also it says that do not follow any sources of information because don't trust anyone, not interested in politics, passive civic position, and also one reason was that they just cannot vote. And people with active civil positions are following it on a different media outlets, on the platforms. They are looking for information about elections, candidates. The most important part for reliable information about elections comes to these people from public service media. They also use commercial media outlets, social networks, and it was a web page of elections, official web page of elections is valimised to receive, and they're tracking also different political parties, and they also watch online broadcasts from meetings of debates. They are actively seeking. And to summarize these two sides, we can say is that public service media is a primary source of information for those who follow the news on elections, and commercial media and social media are the secondary sources. So this was very briefly survey or introduction of the survey conducted by Norstat, and if you are interested, we will share the slides after I will fix some grammar mistakes I am sorry for. I saw them just during the presentation.
Thank you
for listening.
Thank you, Andris. Actually, we promise that we will share those slides after the presentation, but if you say that there are some grammar slips, then sorry, you have muted yourself.
Sorry, I tried to fix them right now, and I will send the new version to you in 1 or 2 minutes.
Yes, so there are now there is a possibility to ask questions. There have been already some interaction, questions and answers asked on chat during Andres' presentation to Anda, and maybe just to sum up and to ask both of you, but also Inga Sprindje has asked about Anda, for example, said from what was being understand from the participants that they are not like very unhappy about closing some Kremlin channels, but still there is this question: where do people have turned to look for information without those channels? Are they looking for some illegal ways to look for this information? Are they just using different kinds of channels? Did you get any information? Maybe Andris, let's start with you.
Oh, sorry. Yes, actually, but we have seen that there are people who are actively still following these banned TV channels over VPN, or there are most probably, but this needs to be looked into it. We believe that there are small companies providing these channels in the local networks in apartment houses where you have, and we haven't checked, but the response from the other surveys shows that about 5 to 10% of audience still follows the banned channels. And on the other hand, we can see is that a lot of people actually turn towards to ETV Plus. Now I'm talking about this Russian speaking community sites, and the number of viewers for ETV Plus has increased actually after the ban. Now it's stabilized, and as we don't know exactly what channels are or television channels are followed, then we have big question marks. The Kantar Emor survey shows us, let's say 1/3 of the time spending actually is spent on the channels which are not monitored by Kantar Emor. So it's kind of gray area. We know people are watching, but what they are watching, does this include Russian television channels or small niche channels from other countries? We just don't know. But as a 1/3 of the audience is quite a big number, then it should be investigated what is behind of this.
Anda, would you like to comment on this?
Actually, no, because there is a lack of data in our research on that.
Maybe we could go on with you, Anda. If we talk about this perception of public service broadcasting in Latvia, Okay, it's me summing up what you told. You know, like what comes out that people think that it's still a reliable source, but it's boring. So does it go together with this news fatigue we can see, and that people just don't want to listen about Ukraine and other important issues?
I would say yes, that there is relations with the content and how this content is perceived by audience member, but still, I think this general perception is, comes out from like, I would say some cultural factors. This attitude which part of the society, which part of those participants learned that this is not this evaluation that public service media are like gray, not so attractive. I would say that this is like preposition how they already perceive before their real experience, because there were very interesting moments during focus group discussions when public service media portal LSM was demonstrated, and they discussed the content provided by LSM-LV, and then larger part of all participants, they were really grateful to see how many high quality and very interesting and diverse content is provided by public service media. This is, I think, this is a combination of actual flow of news where they barely can recognize the source of the content and their stereotypes about the public service media. And when they analyze concrete examples, then there were this process when those stereotypes are getting out of this discussion.
So we could say that at least part of this group actually doesn't know what those media are providing for them.
Yeah, this is how we can say it.
Mm-hmm. Andres, do you have any comments on this?
I agree. Again, it's comes out from the other studies where we have more qualitative data, quantitative data. And then the negative opinion comes from the people actually who don't follow public service broadcasting. They have very strong negative opinion which is formed somehow somewhere. And actually people who have watched or even not on a daily basis, but let's say weekly basis, been in touch with public service media, they are much more positive. But there is a group of people that say refuse to watch it. The response from them is that they know that there will be nothing good to watch or follow. To move their heads towards the open, to give the opportunity before making critics, please have a look. And then it's a challenge. Mm-hmm. We have also these cases when people actually, it was quite a long time, 2 or 3 years ago, when we looked into ETV Plus, and one response from this time was that, oh, this was a good surprise. That I didn't know that this channels exists at all, and when I looked into it, it's not so bad as told. Mm-hmm. So
okay.
It's
Thank you. And there is a question written by Sophie Wright. Thank you for the presentations. Broad question to both of you. But what sort of things do you think could be done to counter information saturation and people feeling too overwhelmed by information to determine what is true? So very broad question.
I would say $1 million question, because by following the very, increasing literature on news fatigue and news avoidance, there are I would say the turn from normative view that even you are tired and stressed, you should follow information, to the more human attitude, which accept. There is a very interesting publication from Claudia Melado, very important media scholar, which proves that sometimes you should actually avoid and it's allowed to avoid the negative impact of news flow, just to keep your mental well-being, your mental health, which means that there, in combination and in context of news fatigue, we should accept that there will be changes in perception. Actually, what is the duties of normal citizens in terms of media and news usage? But actually, I disagree with other conclusions. There were yesterday we followed how data on public service media remit were interpreted, and one of the recommendation related with what you are asking is then if media users, and this appears in focus groups as well, expect more entertainment from public service media, quality entertainment, then I agree with that this kind of content should be increased, but I disagree that those who are not using public service media will turn to public service media when there will be more quality entertainment content, because their perceptions of media landscape doesn't fit usage of public service media, and it's an attitude towards public service media as a brand, not as a particular source of content, either it's entertaining or not.
Thank you. I think at least for me, there are very many questions raised during both presentations, and it's really quite understandable that especially we are discussing, I think, already for a year, how do we address some parts of our audiences, specifically when it comes to disinformation and Russia's influence and so on. So there is a lot of homework to do, I think, for both experts and media professionals. And I really thank you, Anda and Andres, for this presentation. We have already shared your presentations, but if somebody of you don't have a time to download them now, then we will have both presentations and videos on our website, bcme.eu, and yes, thank you once more, and I do really hope that this has been helpful for audience in order to understand how can we work for better. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you. And if somebody has this answer to the question you asked, then I would be more than happy to look into it, and how to make media entertaining, not entertaining, but interesting. That's $1 million question, as Anders says. Hope somebody has the answer, and please write it, send it.
Yes, send to us also, but it's definitely that we will continue those discussions and researches. Thank you. Have a good afternoon. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.